Today we are going to discuss about one of the important area in library and information science, that is the process of communication. The main areas going to discuss in this session are the definitional aspect of the communication, the various components of communication, communication cycle, phases of the communication, process of communication, modes or channels of communication, types of communication, various faced during the process of communication, and the communication skills that can be cultivated by the library professional in their day-to-day life. These are the main components going to discuss in this session. When we talk about the concept of communication, normally there are two types of communication. One is interpersonal communication, means communicating the information or ideas from one person to another person or among a group of persons. At the same time, as far as the library is concerned, there is another type of communication, that is documentary communication, means the information recorded in a documents that are stored in different type of library can be communicated from one place to another place. These concepts also considered as a communication process. In this session, the emphasis is given to the interpersonal communication rather than the documentary communication, but it also provides some insight about the various aspects of documentary communication. Now, let us discuss the concept of communication. Communication is the process of sharing the information between two individuals or group to reach a common understanding. Sharing of information between two individuals or groups to reach a common understanding or a consensus. For it is a process by which information is exchanged between two individuals through messages, signs, symbols, or even through human behavior. These are the two important definitions of communication. Now, let us discuss about the importance of communication in library and information field. Communication plays an important role in all walks of human life. Its impact is very much visible in the all areas of library. It is act as an important factor in library, as library is a social organization. You might heard about the saying, the library is a trinity, means three important components in library, that are the user or the client is, as mentioned by Dr. S.R. Ranganathan, the father of Indian library science. The second component is documents or information, and the third component is the professionals act as an intermediate in between the user and his resources. So, as a social institution, it is very important to have an effective communication between the user and the library professionals, and among the users and the professionals. So communication skill is plays a paramount important role in the library and information centers. It increases the efficiency of library services and improve the quality of products and services, and also enhances the responsiveness from the part of the user community. Now, let us discuss about the various components of a communication process. There are 8 major components in a communication process. That is a sender, a message, encoding, a medium, a receiver, decoding, feedback, and finally noise. Let us explain one by one. A sender. Sender is a person wishing to share the information to other person, or a sender is a person who disseminates his idea to the receiver. A sender decides what message to be sent to the receiver and encode the thought content of his message, and this thought content convert into the appropriate signal, and this signal sent over a communication channel to the receiver. That is the concept of the sender. The second component is message. Message means the thought content of the information, or what information to be communicated from the sender to the receiver. Third component is encoding. Encoding means the sender translating the content of the messages into appropriate symbol or language. This process is known as encoding. Then the receiver, the person who received the information sent by the sender is known as receiver. Receiver decode the message and interpret its meaning. Decoding is the process of converting the idea of messages sent by the sender and interpret and try to make sense of the messages. Medium means a pathway through which the message is transmitted to a sender. Then most important components in a communication process is feedback. It is an interdependence between sender and receiver. Sender interpret the messages and also the response from the receiver, and can send the additional information to the sender in order to avoid misunderstanding and ambiguity. Actually, the feedback phase is initiated by the receiver, and the receiver decide what message to send to the original sender. The main function of the feedback process is to eliminate the misunderstanding, ambiguity of the message, and to reach the correct interpretation. Noise. Noise is another important component of communication process. It is a distortion or any type of errors in the communication process. It is any type of addition to the signal not originally intended by the sender. These type of distortion are surround the entire communication process and make the communication less effective. Now, let us discuss two important phases of communication. In communication process can be divided to broad categories. One is transmission phase and second is feedback phase. Transmission phase means in which information is shared by two or more people, whereas feedback phase in which common understanding or consensus is assured between the sender and the receiver. Now, let us discuss about the communication cycle. Look into the picture of communication cycle. You can see two phases of communication, the above transmission phase and below feedback phase. The sender sends the message or thought content through a medium to the receiver. Receiver decodes the message sent by the sender, and if he has any doubt or clarification, again send the message through the medium to the sender. So this process of sending the messages and receiving it by the receiver is going on again and again until both the parties, sender and receiver, reach a common understanding or consensus. These are the entire communication cycle or communication process. Noise means the distortion or any type of obstacle happening during the process of the communication. So these are the entire pictorial representation of communication process. Now let us discuss about the mode or channels of communication. Broadly speaking, there are two categories of channel of communication or modes of communication. One is formal communication and another is informal communication. Formal communication means communicating the idea or sharing the idea through printed materials or published material. The advantages of this type of communication is that the information is authentic and consistent and hence very popular. The only drawback of this type of formal communication is the time lag in publication. That is the concept of formal way of communication. The second type of communication is informal communication. The informal communication may be oral as well as written. Say for an example, discussion and talk between two friends or discussion among the colleagues, communication via telephone, distributing manuscript, personal letters, etc. are example of the informal way of communication. So there are two modes of communication. One is formal communication and second is information communication. I have earlier mentioned that there are two types of communication. One is interpersonal communication and second is documentary communication. In documentary communication, further divided formal way of formal communication and informal way of communication. Now, different types of communication. Broadly speaking, there are two types of communication. One is verbal communication and second is non-verbal communication. Verbal communication means the encoding of messages into words, either written or spoken. Encoding of the messages into words, either in written or spoken. It may be a oral communication or written communication or electronic or video communication. Non-verbal communication means encoding of the message by means of human behavior like facial expression, body language, pitch of the voice, speed of speech, our style of dress, etc. Actually, the non-verbal communication adds much of the feeling to the process of communication and often says that it gives more effect than the verbal way of communication. Now, the main advantages of written communication over oral communications are the written communication are retrievable in nature and almost permanent and also possible for rereading and better comprehension. The advantages of video or electronic way of communication are it easily transmit the information speedily to any remote areas and the information is very accurate and same message can be sent different people at a time and direct interaction and quick feedback is possible in this type of communication. Now let us discuss about promoting agency of information communication. I have earlier explained there are two types of communication. One is interpersonal communication and documentary communication. The informations are stored in document and these documents are systematically arranged in different areas of a library. So these type of agencies, different agencies involved in systematic generation of information, especially the documentary information is known as promoting agencies of information, which includes other libraries, universities, government publications, industrial house, R&D institutes, book trades, mass media, etc. act as a agency for promoting the information from one place to another place. Now, let us discuss about the important barriers of the communication, especially the interpersonal communication. Number one, the messages that are unclear or incomplete or difficult to understand. And second barrier is message sent over inappropriate medium. And another important barrier in interpersonal communication is no provision for feedback. Messages with no provision for proper feedback mechanism and messages that are received but ignored. Then another one is messages that are misunderstood or messages that lack the proper human elements. As far as the documentary communication, there are also some barriers which include the foreign language barrier, political barrier, economic barrier, procedural complexities, lack of technical manpower and lack of equipments, and finally lack of proper cooperation among the libraries. Let us discuss about the various barriers to effective information communication, especially in the documentary communication. Number one, foreign language. Foreign language act as a barrier or free flow of information. One cannot learn all language. It is not possible for learn all language available in the world. To solve this problem, there are a number of ways are there. For example, use a common language for science and technology, teaching or learning of foreign language, building or developing translation centers, machine translation, etc. The second important problem is political barriers. Due to the development in the field of science and technology, the political conscience is growing among the citizens in the countries. So, countries are not ready to disseminate or provide their valuable information to other nations. So, this type of political components also act as an important barrier among the effective communication. The third important area is economic barrier, which include rising cost of the publication, rise in the postal courier charges, the cost of setting up of a list centers or list institute, the royalty, etc. are important economic problem. The third important economic problem is royalties from the part of the publishers or authors. And another important barrier of effective communication is time lag, or the time taken for publishing the document, that is the time lag. Then procedural complexity include the complexity relating to sending of the publications or foreign exchange, etc. So lack of technical manpower and lack of proper equipments, especially in the area of electronic resources, also act as a important impediments or barrier for effective communication. Now, let us discuss about some of the qualities or important points to be considered by the library professional for improving their communication skills in library environment. As I have earlier explained, library is a social organization. So the librarian should be a good listener. Don't interrupt the communication while speaking with the user community. He should be empathetic towards the user communities, and his speed, tone, and all type of voices, his speech, etc. also impact the proper communication, and he should provide provision for proper feedback mechanism in his communication and provide accurate information to the user as far as possible. In nutshell, in this session, we have discussed about the various concepts relating to the communication process, including the definition of the communication, importance of a good communication in library or information centers, various elements of communication process, phases of communication, the pictorial representation of communication cycle, modes or phases of communication, types of communication, barriers of communication, and communication skills to be inculcated among the library professionals.